My name is Sarah and welcome to the Bookish Knitter. And welcome to another weekly reading update. So this is for the second week of 2025. And I finished 5 books this week. Technically 6. Because I finished one of these books. So if we're counting the bind up, I finished the first book in week 1, but I'm going to talk about all of them today. So I'm actually going to be talking about 7 books in this, oops, sorry for shaking the camera, in this video. So this might be a longer one. Grab a cup of coffee. I got mine. And settle in and let's chat some books, you guys. So the first book that I finished this week was one that I talked about earlier. And I'm like, I can't remember if I talked about this book. I talked about it in one of my daily updates or whatever. And you guys were like, no, you haven't talked about it yet. And I'm like, okay, good. And that is Tying the Knot by Brenda Novak. This is book number 11 in the Whiskey Creek series. And it is Harlequin Special Edition number 3057. It was originally published in September of 2024. And I gave this one 3.5 stars. So this is part of the bind up box set that I've picked up. And I enjoyed this one. So I read this one also. I am participating in the TBR-a-thon that Leandra over at TBR, Leandra and the TBR to Zero, I think is her channel. And so for the bingo, I am just like, as I finish books, I'm just trying to fit them into the bingo slots. And at the end of this video, I'm going to pop up my bingo card so you guys can see where I am now. So anyway, this one was for spot G2, so in the G line, 2 down, and it was beloved author. And I love Brenda Novak, so of course this had to go there. So this is the story of Aja and Grady. So this one was a story about a reality show. So basically at the beginning of the book, Grady is a character that you met back in the original Whiskey Creek series. Now, the Whiskey Creek series was never a category romance series. It was not category, but it was published by Harlequin. And she wrote 10 books in that series. And that series ended in 2016. So there has not been a book published in 8 years, 9 years at the time of the publication of this one, 8 years. And then all of a sudden, for the 75th anniversary of Harlequin, I guess Harlequin asked her, would she come back and write something for the special edition line, which is where she got her start. And she's like, yeah, I guess, of course. And came back and finally wrote Grady's story, who was like, I think one of the only characters that she hadn't written about in the Whiskey Creek series. So I kind of really love that happened. But it kind of goes to show you that even 8 or 9 years after a series ends, it can come back and reinvent itself. I talked, at the time I'm filming this, it was 5 minutes ago, but I talked yesterday in my daily video about the Cat Who mystery series, where Lillian Jackson Braun wrote the first 3 or 4 books and then took 30 years before she came back and wrote the rest of the series. So never count a series as being dead is my point here. So anyway, this is a reality TV show type story. So in this one, Grady meets this woman named Willow, and they're at a bar. It's at the very beginning of the book. And he kind of thinks she's good looking, and she's in town scouting out people for this reality show called Tying the Knot, where they meet and then they end up getting matched up with people and they get married immediately. And then they have to like navigate the marriage, and are they going to stay married or not? Are they going to get it annulled or whatever the case may be? So Grady goes on the show basically to meet her, and he kind of tries to sabotage himself. But Aja is on the show to help her brother because her brother wants to be on the show, and they're like, we'll only take your brother if you'll be on the show as well. So her and Grady end up getting paired up together for, it's in the book. And it's really, really cute. My biggest issue with this one is that I found the romance was really way too quick. Like, they didn't even get together, like, become a couple until almost 40% of the book. So it was really hard, especially when it's a shorter book. It's harder to believe in that romance. So while I did like the story a lot, I found the romance itself very rushed. But it was still cute and sweet. And if you read the Whiskey Creek series and you're a fan of Grady, read this one. Give it a quick read. It was really enjoyable. But yeah, I want to go back now. I've read the Whiskey Creek series, but I want to go back and reread from the beginning. So I'm hoping to do that this year. The next book that I finished was The Bind Up, was The Beast. And I'm so happy to have it. I loved this so much. And that was Outback Nurse. And there are 3 separate stories inside this volume. So I'm going to talk about each story separately. But I did count this book as one book for the TBR-a-thon bingo. And that is for spot G1. So again, in the G side, number 1. And this was for a book that was longer than your previous book. So the book that I finished before this one was 275 pages. This one was 500 pages. So it definitely fit the prompt. And because again, I'm counting this as one book. And on Goodreads, I counted this as one book finished. But I did list all 3 books separately on my spreadsheet of category romance books. So the first story in this one was The Playboy Doctor's Marriage Proposal by Fiona Lowe. This is the only one I've not been able to find digitally. I looked and I can't find, I found a copy of it digitally, but it was like in part of a bind up, but you can probably find it on thrift books if you're looking to read it. So this is the story, you're gonna have to bear with me because I read this one like 2 weeks ago, of Emily and Linton. That's right. And basically all three of these stories take place in the Australian outback, which is delightful, all kinds of delightful. And she was in a relationship that was not the best. Her ex really treated her badly. He made her feel really bad about herself, and she had no self-confidence. And she meets Linton, and she's always had a crush on him. And, you know, the relationship ensues between the two of them. Basically, all three of these stories are doctor and nurse stories, hence the title Outback Nurse. And it was delightful. It was fun. I gave it 3.5 stars. All three of the stories in this one, I would say, get a spice rating of 1 chili. I do have a new spice rating meter. I found this year, and let me just share it with you. So 1 chili, I can tell you. I'm actually going to put graphics up. So I'm going to have little graphics here, you guys. I think it's going to be cute. So 1 chili basically means it's a few brief steamy scenes. 1 or 2 of them are explicit. That's what 1 chili means. If you guys are interested, let me know. I will do an entire video on my new spice rating meter. I think that might actually really be a good idea. So maybe I'll do that this week or next week, and then you guys will know going forward. But this book, like the first book I talked about, Tying the Knot as well, also gets 1 chili. And then all three of the stories in this one get 1 chili as well. And I do have a cupcake as well, which I've showed you guys in a previous video, which means there's nothing. It's just a cute, sweet romance. So anyway, so that was the first story. The second story was The Outback Nurse by Carol Marinelli. And this one, I gave 4 stars to. I really enjoyed it. So this one, I had to actually do some looking up, and I learned something in this one. I learned some Australian, I don't want to call it slang, maybe terminology, and that is sister. So when I first read the back of this story, it said, Sister Olivia Morelli started a new job in the outback with some trepidation. I thought, sister, I'm like, was she a nun? And I started reading it, and I'm like, well, it doesn't say anything that she was in like a convent or anything, like, you know, and that she left the nunnery, I guess. Is that what it's called? I don't know. The nunnery. But I did some searching, and the word sister in Australia is used to talk about nurses. And the reason they use the term sister instead of nurse is because way back when, most of the nurses were nuns. So they would call them sister, and it just stuck. And I guess they still do it to this day. And I kind of really like that. I don't know why. I just think it's really delightful. But I learned that, and I feel very proud of that. So anyway, in this one, I'm trying to remember now. Okay, so in this one, our main character, Olivia, actually shows up at this small outback town. She's getting away from a bad relationship, and she, you know, is trying to heal a broken heart, and the doctor falls for her, and it's their relationship, and it's, again, really cute. Takes place in the outback. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I liked it a bit more than the first story, mainly because I like the characters a bit more in this story. So, yeah. It was delightful. And then the third and final story was The Outback Doctor's Surprise Bride by Amy Andrews, who actually sent me this book. So thank you again, Amy. I really, really appreciate it. And I do have to show you guys. Can I get to it quickly? Amy Andrews, bear with. I showed this somewhere else, but this was such a delight for me. Amy herself signed this to me. So thank you again, Amy. And I love the fact that she signed her portion of it. Not the front of the book, but her part of the story. So yeah, hers is The Outback Nurses, or The Outback Doctor's Surprise Bride by Amy Andrews. Amy writes with a lot of great humor. Now, she usually writes on the spicier side. This one, actually, I was surprised, was a little bit lower. Again, it was a 1 chili rating, so it was like only 1 or 2 explicit scenes in the book. And they were mostly kind of behind closed doors, I would say. But in this one, this is the story of Helen and James. And he is he's the doctor, and he shows up at this small outback town to become they call them what is it? Locum? Locum. And that basically means a doctor that travels from town to town, being a doctor, like a travel doctor, if you will, I guess. And he never stays very long. He's very much like that gypsy soul on his motorcycle. He's had a really bad childhood. She's had a really bad childhood. There's some great humor in this story as well. I really like the banter between Helen and James. I thought it was really, really well done. And I liked it a lot, you know. So, you know, the two of them, you know, they kind of have feelings for each other. But this one is very much a slow burn. It takes place over like a 4 or 5 month period. Whereas the first 2 stories kind of take place like within a few weeks. And I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really great story. It was probably my favorite out of the three. And I'm not just saying that because Amy sent me the book, but in all honesty, it was probably my favorite of the three, and I really enjoyed it. It was actually published here in North America under the medical line. The first two books by Fiona Lowe and Carol Marinelli were only published under Mills and Boon under the medical line. So if you're looking to pick them up, you wouldn't find them under the Harlequin banner. You'd find them under the Mills and Boon banner, but you can find the last book under both. And for those of you who don't know, this edition, and I've got another couple coming their way to me, was part of the Mills and Boon 50th anniversary collection from Australia. So these were published in Australia by Mills and Boon to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Mills and Boon in Australia last year. So there are, like I said, 4 of them. So there's this one, which are the medical books. There is Reunion in Marriage, which I think were more the Desire Presents novels. Guarded Secrets, which was the intrigue, romantic suspense. And Cowboy at Heart, which of course were the cowboy stories. So yeah. Sorry if you can hear poor Press. He's under the tree. He's our little present under the tree. So I finished that one. The next one that I finished was the Nancy Drew book. Deadly Intent, Carolyn Keene. Takes place in New York City. Rockstar goes missing. Nancy tries to find him. Shenanigans ensue. I enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. Not much else to say about it. Nancy Drew. And then I finished Brownies and Broomsticks by Bailey Cates. And this is the first book in the Magical Bakery Mystery Series. And for TBR-a-thon Bingo, this was for B4, so under the B, 4 down. And it was for genre blend. And the reason I put it under genre blend is because it's both a cozy mystery and a paranormal. And I gave this one 3.5 stars. Now, this is a reread for me. This was one of the first cozy mystery series I read. And when I originally read it, I really, really enjoyed it. This time, not so much. Because I've read a lot of cozy mystery series since, and I've found some flaws in this one that I don't particularly love as much now. So there is witchcraft in this story, and that's fine. I appreciate that. I get it, right? My issue with something like that in like a mystery story is that it becomes easy. So there's a scene in this book where they're trying to get information off of a potential suspect, and they're trying to get him to answer questions, and he's not answering any questions. So one of the witches like makes her voice do whatever to get him to talk to them. So he's he's talking under duress, essentially, right? And it's like an easy way for the author to move the story along instead of, I don't know, I just found it like an easy way out, if you will. And I find that sometimes with these paranormal stories where you have both paranormal characters and then like normal, non-paranormal characters, if you will. So yeah, so I didn't particularly love that. I even debated on continuing on with the series. I am going to read book 2, and if I'm still not, like, if I still only give it like 3.5 stars, I might just cut my losses at that point and just not finish the rest of the series. But I will go on to book 2 and give that one a reread. I've read the first 3, I think, in this one. I wanted to continue on, but we shall see. The other thing was the whole witchcraft thing. Well, I appreciate it, and I have done a lot of research on Wicca, paganism, witchcraft, the realities of those things as religions and as practices by people. What I find is that the author's using those terminologies, but using it towards more Hollywood witchcraft, and I don't like that as much. Anyway, that's just a personal thing, and most people would even notice that. So that's just from my point of view. But anyway, and the final book that I finished this week was Road Trip Rivalry by Mona Schroff. This is another special edition novel. It's special edition number 3058, again published September 2024. I gave this one 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed it. And for TBR-a-thon Bingo, this was for I5, so under the I, 5. And this was for Strong Woman Protagonist. So our 2 main characters, this one takes place in Ireland. So if you are looking to if you're doing like the Around the World Challenge where you're trying to read stories from different countries or whatever the case may be, here's your Ireland pick if you want it. So our 2 main characters, Porvy and Cavan, are on a flight to Dublin, and the flight ends up getting grounded because of bad weather. So they end up in Cork. And there's this woman, this older Indian woman on the flight with them. And she kind of suckers them into driving her to Dublin. Only she's got an ulterior motive. And they end up taking her on like a road trip around Ireland to get to Dublin. And it was really, really cute. Super, super sweet. Our 2 main characters, it was a enemies to lovers romance 100%. She couldn't stand him. It was a whole thing. But it turns out like they were going, like, where they were going was this conference. And they were actually against each other at this conference. Like, they had differing opinions, but they didn't know who each other was, kind of an idea. So anyway, it was a miscommunication thing as well, which I know not a lot of people like, but it worked in the story. A lot of heart, a lot of humor, a lot of like seeing the Irish countryside. Like, they kiss the Blarney Stone, they go to the cliffs, they go to this castle, it's like a tour around thing. And then again, much like the book that I read in December, at the end of December, the Terry Wilson book, this book was a 4-star until the epilogue. And then I read the epilogue and it got a 4.5 star. The epilogue was so cute. I really liked it. It was an epilogue that didn't need to be there. Like, the author had no reason to put the epilogue in, but it just added just that little bit extra that I loved. Highly, highly recommend this one. Again, if you're doing some sort of a challenge for around the world and you need an Ireland, here's one to pick, because it's a standalone as well. So you don't have to worry about, what you're reading. Or the fact that you're like reading a book out of order in a series. So yeah, so that is about it, you guys. I did not bring my crafting over to show you. I did not get a lot done this week, to be honest. I got some done on the festive pumpkin cottage, but not a lot because my shoulder's been bugging me, so I've been kind of like not stitching as much. And yeah, so videos coming up this week on the channel. On Wednesday, we're going to be talking about the category Romance Book Club for February. I have a very special announcement for that, so stay tuned. There's going to be 2 spotlight authors for February, so stay tuned for that video. And then on Friday, I'm going to be doing a winter romance recommendation video. Not a Christmas romance, but one book set in wintertime. So stay tuned for that video as well. So yeah, so anyway, guys, that is all that I have for today. Let me know in the comments below if you've read any of these books and what you thought about them. And until my next video, everybody, take care and happy reading. Thank you all so much for watching. Bye, guys.